I will have to be loyal to your shadows. This is unkind, Cleo, beneath you.
It is the best I can do. They will be our children, and you will shape their choices, and you will love them.
Hey guys, it's Pete Peppers here, and I am joined with a very special guest today. I'm joined by the writer, director, executive producer, showrunner, and co-creator of Foundation, which is in its second season that's airing on Apple TV right now. David, welcome. David S. Goyer.
Thank you for having me. This is the first time I've done your show, your channel, so it'll be exciting. But I am a fan of what you do.
Thanks. That's great to hear. I didn't leave anything out there, right? I mean, that's all the titles that you have.
I think that's enough.
Yeah. It's a lot of hats that you wear, and you've been engaging the fans a lot. You know, you're as far as someone who's in that showrunner position is concerned. I mean, I see you answering a lot of questions and engaging with fans. And sometimes I wonder, you know, do you ever just wake up and say, was Foundation really the right choice? You know, and I'm joking, but it's a lot of work, and it's a thing that has a lot of expectations tied into it, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are many days when I question whether or not I should have embarked upon Foundation, but it's not the fan engagement or passion or even occasional outrage that gives me pause. I think that the thing that gives me pause is the fact that it's such a massively complicated show. The fact that we film it overseas, I had to be intermittently away from my family for a long time. It takes forever to film, and it's just so complicated. And there are definitely times when I wish, oh God, I wish I had just a much simpler show that I live in Los Angeles, that shot in Vancouver, where I can come and go. But to be honest, the fan engagement I find pretty stimulating, and I'm putting it, as long as it's passionate and respectful, I don't care. Like, I mean, you've said some things that are critical. I really don't mind that. And I think that the sort of cottage industry of podcasts and YouTube shows that have grown up around the show, I just find really interesting. And a lot of the more thoughtful ones I find interesting even as a fan myself. Or I like that it's evoked those kinds of passionate conversations. Not just about Asimov, but free will, robots, everything like that. You know, the ones that are a drag are the occasional, like, you know, just outrageous racists or misogynists or things like that.
Of course, yeah.
But I mean, that just comes with the territory.
Well, yeah, that's an internet thing. It's not really just a TV or a Foundation thing, right? You know,
it is an internet thing. I do find it curious. Some of the people, I'll call them the book purists on Reddit, and the vast majority of them, I think it's been a really interesting engagement and a fair debate. But then I think some of them have also just misunderstood the books, or in some cases misunderstood, like, you know, critical things about it, or I do find it interesting that the people that are just outraged that one would change anything, or at all. But it's, by and large, I find it really stimulating, and I like hearing the theories, and I like the conversations, and it's cool.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because I think that there's a lot of people who primarily view Foundation as the original trilogy, and a lot of the things that they say are related to that. And I think pretty specifically, you know, the way the book is set up, those books are set up because it's a fix-up novel. You know, it's a bunch of short stories put together.
Completely, that first book was not intended to be a novel,
right? So you have all of these like aha moments or gotcha moments at the end of each one, because that's the way that, you know, that writing style works, right? So you have these like little things that, I mean, generally speaking, it's the smartest guy, who's there, figures something out, and then you go, aha, this is a big revelation, right? At the end, you're looking at it from the bigger story, the whole thing, and Asimov himself went back and rearranged a lot of those ideas that people, and I'm not criticizing people for liking those things about the books.
No, I mean? Because I liked it too when I read them.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you do have that. There was that hook. It's sort of like the Salvor. If we think about season 1, Salvor's character, those were delightful. To see that, just that that was the answer. That this character, like I said, was sort of the smartest person in the room, kind of figured things out where everybody else didn't. And that's a satisfying thing to have happen. But I mean, even Asimov figured out that you just can't do that over and over again for the entirety of the story. Right. So I feel like as someone, who's read the whole thing, like robots and Empire and everything, like, I think that I can see a lot of ideas that you're bringing in earlier that will help to pay off later. I mean, I do have some questions about that we'll talk about a little bit more specifically as we go on here. But, I think generally speaking, I think that there has been a lot more care to try to work with the story and work inside that world than people give you credit for sometimes.
I mean, I think so. I also think that in some cases, people, you're already seeing it in the reception of season 2. Some people are saying, "Oh, I understand why they did that now in season 1," or
right,
that's fair enough. There are also just sort of kind of economic realities, right? I mean, no streamer was going to support a purely anthological, massively budgeted show that just changed characters every single episode. I mean, and the other thing is that we have to be mindful of the fact that we're, I consider myself a fairly hardcore science fiction, science geek, but I know for this show to work, it has to appeal to people outside of, my specific circle in the Venn diagram, so it's got to work for a much, much larger audience. And so we're mindful of that as well, sort of trying to keep both of these audiences in mind at the same time.
Yeah. And I think, for me, I mentioned that you wear a lot of hats. I have a lot of hats that I wear when it comes to this series, because, I cover TV. That's what I do, for my job, is I think about TV in general. I did read Asimov at a point in time when it really spoke to me, like where I thought, wow, this is really neat. And it was sort of a gateway into other science fiction. And, then I also, that's what I do for fun, is I read science fiction, you know what I mean? So I look at it from a lot of different perspectives. And the TV side, I was a creative for a long time. I made visual art, and, that making ideas, like taking ideas and making them into something, right? When you think about that, like you can't make a book it can't have the same effect on you in the visual medium, right? So adaptation should always play to the medium. And I think that you guys, have done a great job as far as, the visuals and the world that you created here. You know what I mean? Like, I think that is, that, people have to, I don't think people always understand that, that when you go from one medium to the other, there's a big difference in how you deliver those same ideas and those same stories. So I kind of want to move into this episode, because I know we're on a limited time here, and it's a big one. This episode 209, Long Ago, Not Far Away. Before we talk about what actually happened, this is written by Jane Espenson and Eric Carrasco, if I'm saying that right.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask you about Jane Espenson, because she didn't work on the first season, correct?
She did. She did. I believe you see her name in the last 6 episodes. What happened is she joined the writers' room relatively late.
Okay.
In the game, and I think we had rough drafts done of the first 10, but it became apparent to me that we needed another heavyweight. And I was in particular hoping to get a female heavyweight. And Jane, I was aware of Jane for a long time. She's kind of a legend working on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about. She has a pretty detailed, she has a lot of sci-fi in her resume.
Yeah. And she was available. And so I had lunch with her and I said, do you want to come on as I think they call it a consulting producer and help me write scenes, punch up scripts, whatnot. And so her fingerprints are on all sorts of little scenes and moments throughout season 1. She didn't write a script from scratch, but she really enjoyed the process. And then she joined us for season 2, and now she's hooked and she wants to stay with the show for the life of the show. But I think Jane she's the polar opposite of me in terms of the kind of writer that I am. So I think, and we have a lot of talented writers on the show, but I would say she's, I don't know if I'm the McCartney, she's the Lennon or something like that.
Okay. I can dig it. You also have, because just in case people don't know who she is, she worked on Firefly, Battlestar Galactica, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and on and on. I think there was only 2 women that had writing credits on Game of Thrones, and she was one of them.
She worked on season 1 of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's been around, and been attached to a lot of things that people know. And then this one was directed by Roxanne Dawson, who is also has some sci-fi DNA in her history too. She was on Star Trek Voyager, I think is what
I believe so. But I know this is heretical, but I'm not really a Trekkie, so I've never seen.
I'm not either. I'm not really that big of a Trek guy either.
But Roxanne has directed over 100 episodes of television. She directed episodes 8 and 9 in season 1, 8 and 9 in season 2. She's a phenomenal director, and I just adore her as a person.
Yeah, because I went digging in and I saw that she was on that, and I think that her first directing credits came through that. That was Voyager was a show that ran for a long time, so she started directing there. But man, she hit the ground running and did just directed all kinds of shows between then and now. So you can definitely, this, like I said, I think this is one of the best episodes, maybe the best episode of the entire series to this point. And, it's just firing on all cylinders. So,
well, one of the things that you hope largely with the season, and so far it seems to be the case, with season 2, is that, I've seen a lot of stuff online about, I like episode 2 more than 1. I like episode 3 even more than 2. So far, most of the episodes, people have said, I like it more. I like it more. I like it more. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want. And the episode's great, but the episode's great because it was paying off all the pipe that we laid throughout the season. So
yeah, absolutely.
This is the big one,
Yeah, and Demerzel, obviously, this was the thing that you had sort of teased it in different interviews and things, saying that we would get some backstory, and so that I find that this Demerzel is the most interesting character. So of course, I've been waiting to see what was going to happen here, and you answered a very big question related to this character. Why she does what she does, why she's compelled to serve Empire.
Well, she's, we've been quite deliberately portraying Demerzel as very manipulative, potentially even monstrous this season. But then you see this backstory and you realize she's absolutely in bondage and is absolutely forced to be doing all of these horrific things. And so my hope is that after this episode, people perceive her character in a different way. I think it's the opening of the episode. I think the whole thing is totally heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys went the route of another one of those mini movies that you've done throughout, and I thought that this was it wasn't exactly what I was expecting necessarily. You know, being a book reader and kind of trying to figure out where it was going to go, but I guess what really struck me was there was a lot of nuance in what was happening. Like, I'm still not even 100% sure after watching it a couple of times, you know, exactly how I'm supposed to feel about what's going on with different things. You know what I mean? Because on the one hand, you have a character who's obviously very intelligent. You know, she's a higher form of intelligence, and she kind of gets duped, but it doesn't really play out that way if you really go through all the steps. So, you know, what I guess in your words, what's going on in that moment whenever he finally does let her out of her cage?
We worked on the writing of these scenes quite a bit, the directing, the editing of these scenes quite a bit, working with Roxanne and Laura. And we wanted this stuff to be really complicated and really murky. Shades of gray, right? And so the question is, can more than one thing be true?
Yes.
There's no question she's been a prisoner there for 5,000 years. There's no question that she is manipulating Cleon as a means to just have input and communicate with someone after 5,000 years. I mean, just imagine how deprived you would feel. But then with an eye towards getting out, there's no question she is doing all of that, right? In a kind of ex machina kind of way. And yet, they are a thinking being. They do have emotions. And I think at the same time, she developed a fondness for Cleon the First, like a genuine fondness for the boy that became a man, all of these things. So I think it's complicated. There's a bit of a Patty Hearst syndrome going on. And she is grateful in that moment. And what she should have done is just broken his neck and then just, tore her way out of there and grabbed the next spaceship and broken away. But she felt grateful and she had this moment of sort of benevolence, and then it was all lost because then you see Cleon the First. I don't know if we're allowed to swear on this show or not.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry.
Cleon the First is a motherfucker. I mean, he is just a devious guy, and when he explains the nature of how he's changed her programming, it's heartbreaking, and he's truly monstrous. And I think, so far I said we don't do a lot of villains on the show. I do consider Tellum to be a villain. Yeah. But I think the biggest villain of the show so far writ large is absolutely Cleon the First.
Yeah. And, I thought it was interesting because of this idea that she told him stories, right? That was a big part of this. And that gave you a way to show that it was kind of like Tales of the Arabian Nights or something, right? Like
100%. We based this whole thing on Scheherazade.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought there might be a connection there. So I mean, she's bargaining for her life. She's also, like you said, actively kind of seducing this young man as he's growing. And she kind of lays that out against what she did with the previous her captor, the guy who, I can't remember what his name was, the previous emperor.
Arabonus,
something like that. I remember when I wrote it down, I wasn't sure about the spelling, so it didn't really. But
since I read the script, yeah.
So those are the two people that she's dealt with in that situation. So she's obviously figuring out how to go through with it, and So I think that when you're first watching it, you have this immediate okay, we're going to finally know about like what's going on with Demerzel. You wonder how truthful she's being, how the three laws, you had mentioned it before, and now you hear it here, and you're wondering, well, is there more to that? She can harm people. We've seen that, but she can't harm him. Like, there's a lot that we don't really know yet. And then I'm sure we'll kind of figure out as we go on. But the thing about it is that she kind of had a human moment there, right? Whenever she didn't kill him, she was a little too human, and she paid a fairly hefty price for that. That we've been watching for the last couple of seasons.
And there's also, look, there's more to her story, and hopefully if the show goes on long enough, we'll flesh in other backstory elements, the spiral and whatnot. But this was the most important story to tell right now in terms of her relationship to the genetic dynasty.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know you answered this one big question, but obviously I can't help but think that this is a layer, that there are other things that are nested inside there that'll come out later.
I'll tell you an obvious one is, I'm just saying this now. I mean, she has not always worn that face. So why this face? Where did that face come from? Is a story we hope to tell one day.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things here that you're probably not going to elaborate on, but I feel like I have to bring them up. Whenever they're talking about the stories, he says she told stories of old Earth. She name checks it there, and you haven't really touched on that too much in the series. Why the galactic center is on Trantor and things like that. He presents her with this toolkit that we've seen, and that was sort of the thing that had book nerds and people who are really paying close attention. I was convinced this was our Daniil, before because of this one particular prop. And a lot of people waited till you confirmed that later, but I was like, it's going to be that, you know what I mean? But, so she has this toolkit, and he is able to change her programming, and he has this little device. So, I mean, is there anything you can say about any of that?
About how he was able to change her programming? Or where the toolkit came from?
Yeah, because he said he had been collecting things, or I think is the way he described it. And it took him quite some time to get his plan together.
So we explore a little bit more about that toolkit and where it came from, or we will next season. In terms of, I'll answer two separate things. In terms of like some of the specifics of how we programmed him or her, it's sometimes I think about like how far down the rabbit hole do we want to explore something in terms of explaining the science behind something, and how, while there might be a small subsection of the audience is really interested in that, and I myself might be really interested in that, are we going to lose the mainstream audience who won't be interested in that? So I don't know that we'll ever explicitly explain how he was able to reprogram her, or how he was able to circumvent the three laws. Some of that is because I'm not sure how this specific technicality of that would be of interest to the mainstream audience or not. Some of it is the rights to that are bifurcated. Right. So I can sort of mention the three laws. I can mention Daniil now, but I can't wade too deeply into the iRobot universe.
Yeah.
I will say with regards to Old Earth, it's what we call a distant mountain, which is it's like a story point that we're dropping hints about that we hope to get to. And in terms of how in depth we go into Earth's history or how Trantor came to be the galactic center and not Earth, some of that will depend on how long the show runs.
Yeah,
because I have an off ramp that I can end the show in 4 seasons and 1 in 6 and 1 in 8.
Yeah,
and because I don't want to leave the audience hanging, and so to a certain extent, I'm pretty sure we'll at least get to 4, the end of 4. And so when I have an indication of kind of like, there's no question season 2 is built, and season 3 builds, and season 2, where they say they'll greenlight 2 seasons at one time, like they do with Game of Thrones. It's a question of like, how much of an off ramp, how long an off ramp do I have? Do I have enough time to really? I want to tell all of that, but it's a question of, will I have enough time to do it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that makes the most sense to me. And I think if anybody really thinks about it, then yeah, because what you don't want is, you don't want to hang everything on a cliffhanger, hoping that that's going to get you a renewal, and then it ends, and then we never find out. Obviously you want to tell the whole story, but if you can't, then there are graceful ways to make something that still feels complete, even if it's not everything you want to do in the first place.
Yeah, and without giving too much away, I would say that, roughly speaking, season 4 would take us to the end of the original trilogy, more or less.
Yeah.
And season 6 would, it's not exactly, but it would take us like a little further into the sort of sequels and some reinvention. And then the last 2 seasons, he never finished it, but I have some notion of where he was going, and it did fall in line with where I was thinking. And so that would really be uncharted territory getting into the last 2 seasons. Although we have dropped some potential kernels that would point towards that.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to talk more about Demerzel, but let's talk about the other things that happen here first.
Yes.
We had a couple of
the episode. The episode ends on a massive cliffhanger, right?
Yeah. Well,
in terms of terminus, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's some big questions in this. One of the questions I had going into this was, what exactly was going on Ignis. We got a couple of big developments there. One of them was a fairly big surprise, and one not so much. You brought Harry. Harry shows up here at the end.
Yes.
I mean, my initial reaction was, okay. I'm looking at him. He's
how the hell is this possible?
Yeah, I'm looking at him. He has the same clothes on. He looks dirty. Like, this isn't a replacement that was shipped in off planet or something like this. This is the same guy that we saw die. That makes me like, well, maybe he's a robot or something like that. But the big thing here is that it's a gamble, right? When you closed this episode out, the episode where he dies in the water, I feel like in that situation, if you're going to have like a last minute rescue, like if Gail's going to come in or something like that's going to happen, that usually is going to happen in the same episode, right? Because
or the beginning of the next episode.
Yeah, because you don't want to draw out that. You don't want to have, okay, this is an emotional moment. You're watching Harry Seldon die, and then you don't want to undermine that later whenever you come up with, but this doesn't exactly feel that way. This is something that is, it feels like a surprise. Like, I was like, what? You know what I mean? Like, where did this guy come from? Losing Tellum is not a surprise. She's not really good at playing nice with others.
Sure.
She's not going to let Gail take over, and she's going to sit back quietly. And once she killed Harry, or attempted to kill him, or whatever is going on there, they're not both going to, be a team running Ignis from that point forward. But like, what was some of the thinking that went into this you gave Harry a body, seemed pretty important, and then you killed him off, which was, it was surprising, but like, then you go a couple of episodes and now he's back. So what was the...
Well, look, we're gonna reveal the answer as to what the hell happened there.
Yeah, we'll get into that when we talk about the finale.
But I will say that, we will reveal that. Part of it is, and we'll see what the audience thinks of it or not. I think that I consume television just like anyone, and I'm aware of the patterns of consuming television. And one of the things that we talk a lot about whether or not the audience will have a tolerance for this reveal or that reveal, or is that schmuck bait or not?
Yeah.
But by the same token, what I've tried to do with my team, particularly in season 2 sometimes, is break the conventional pattern. Because I do feel like audiences are now trained, I know what happened, or this happened, and it's not what you think, right? And so I would say the majority of people that watched the end of episode 6 did not think Harry was dead, which I was fine with that because he was not dead. I'm more, and look, for the people that did think Harry was dead, I'm fine with that too, because they're asking the question, why would you bring him back just to kill him, right? Mm-hmm. But for the people that didn't think he's dead, I was more interested in them theorizing as to how he could live or how he would be rescued. And the nice thing is, I haven't heard any chatter online about what we ended up doing at all.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And so that makes me feel good because people are like, Salvor's going to give him mouth to mouth. But then we pull the move with Salvor at the end of 7. And so, and then some people, I was worried, will people react negatively because we ended in a way 6 and 7 in the same way? But by and large, they didn't. They were like, I don't know what's going to happen. And so at the end of the day, that's what you hope and that's what I like it when I'm watching a show is being surprised as to what will happen, but then sometimes being pleasantly surprised when I hear the solution. And so far, that seems to be the case by and large with season 2. We'll see. It's impossible to know.
Yeah.
100% how the audience is going to react. I will say that there are a couple of things that we did in the season that I thought I was worried people would react negatively to that they haven't reacted negatively to at all. And another thing that's interesting is, just a tiny thing is where the prime radiant was hidden, and I thought it was pretty obvious. We did 2 shots of it, right? And I thought it was pretty obvious, but then tons of people didn't see it. So that's interesting too. We had this big debate: should we show it once or should we show it twice? Is twice too much? I thought it was too much, but then a lot of the audience still didn't see it, which is, I think, fine.
Yeah, I picked up on it the second time I went through because of
So not the first time.
I mean, I saw it the first time, but I wasn't sure what it was. You know what I mean? Like
good.
I was
Good.
I was like, is that the primary? And then it's gone. So I just sort of went in the back of my mind, and then you see him have it flattened out in his office at Helicon. And then that's the key. So when I watched it the next time, I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But that's
give that a little tap and it's going to pop back up.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring that up, it operates in the same way with like Harry's death or not death a little bit, is how much is enough? How much is too much? How much will the audience tolerate? What won't they tolerate? If I had only 1 shot of the radiant, people might have said, oh, that's bullshit, or that came out of nowhere. If I had 3 shots, obviously people would have been, oh, that's too much. Is it, we brought Harry back, and by the same token, just because we brought him back, I'm trying to let the audience know, yes, on the surface of it, we wouldn't bring him back just to kill him an episode or 2 later. But by the same token, I'm trying to let the audience know, if you think, because of the way you've been trained to watch television, that character has plot armor necessarily, you're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it, in knowing the whole story at this point, I think that it's a gamble that pays off because the plan worked out. You know what I mean? The way that you did it. Like, the question I was asking before was more about just like what you were telling me there about, how do you when you're putting it together the first time, like how do you set up the structure for that? And I think that it makes sense, because if you did the big reveal in the next episode, then it would have been just like, well, why did we even do that in the first place? That little bit of space in between, it gives
people wondering.
Yeah, it gives a little bit of time to grow, and I think it works a lot better than I would have expected. You know what I mean? So I thought that was pretty cool. The one thing about that whole situation is Callie. I really find that character and that situation on Una's world kind of fascinating, and how Harry came back in the first place. I think you said on your blog.
Yeah. Go on.
I was just going to say, I think on your blog, you mentioned that if the show makes it, you will eventually go back to Una's world.
Yes.
Is there anything we're missing? Like, I mean, the fans have been talking about that since it happened. As a writer, director, producer, is there anything that you have there that you think that we're missing out on when we're thinking about that situation?
I've seen a lot of the chatter about Una's world in Calais and the different theories. I will say this is a character we will return to, and we will return to Una's world as well. When I met with Rowena King, she was, I think, in 2 episodes in season 2. I said, this is a part that's going to grow quite a bit. It's going to start out almost as a cameo, and I will say that character is meant to be a fairly significant character as the show progresses. But I can't tell you the nature.
It feels that way, yeah.
Yeah. She said a lot of things in that second episode, which may or may not be true, and that's all I can say.
Yeah, she made some miracles happen there on Una's world, and then when we go to Terminus here in this episode, we see where the Foundation makes their miracles when they go into this church. I really, really like. There's so much to talk about in this that I don't think we can really. I don't know if we can do it justice, but I want a couple of things to point out, I guess, or a couple of things I wanted to let you expand upon. Paulie, his actor, you really got a winner here with this particular actor. He does a fantastic job, but having someone that was in, so key in the first season, and having him still around and having him have this moment in front of the Emperor. I mean, this is really, like, for the first phase of Foundation, this is really all of it in one scene here, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because Paulie's arc is, about the character that might have had faith and lost it, and lost his way, and is challenged and meets a God that he knows wasn't a God, but then comes to embrace it. And by the end of this episode, I mean, he plants his flag that he never got to plant, and surrenders himself as the world is coming down around him. But I also thought he's a character that has a lot of cynicism, but of course that's masking the heart that he really feels. So that scene in which he's forced to sell the miracles in front of Day, it's a very moving scene, because you see at the end of the day, despite the alcohol and despite the drugs, he's quite good at it. And and he really does believe. It's just that he's been afraid to believe. And I love that scene so much. And I think the thing that Day, Day takes it in, and he takes in the fact that Polly's words are meaningful to the audience, and Day is jealous of it. and that's why he kicks him. And frankly, I think that's why Day ultimately decides that if he, maybe he decides to destroy, Terminus when he meets with Dr. Selden. But I contend he probably decided he was going to destroy Terminus right then and there. And it's purely venal. I mean, it's out of jealousy. He recognizes that these people are dangerous and that Polly's faith is dangerous, but it's also jealousy, that the fact that he can't evoke that kind of faith.
Yeah.
So yeah. I love that scene.
Yeah, I really do too. And I think that, what's powerful about it is that the religion is a ruse. They know that it's built in. And by the end of this, Polly is actually telling the truth, and it's almost like he's rediscovering it for again, and like you said, Day definitely it does. There's something that happens today there where he says, you know what, these people are actually kind of right in a way, you know what I mean? Like, and that's not really something I can abide by. So
you just have to destroy them.
Yeah, and there's, like I said, there's so much in that we could get into, but I want to make sure, because I think I think you're right. I think that there is a switch. There's a line he passes here, but we really see that expressed whenever he talks to Dr. Selden, to the Harry inside the vault. And, he really thought he was an outlier. I mean, that's a lot of what's going on here, right?
It's that, and then there's another moment or two when it's a long scene that we intercut, where you see Selden addressing Demerzel instead of Day, and it clearly drives him crazy. He's like, "Why? Don't talk to the robot. Talk to me. What's your problem? Why aren't you talking to me?" And what bothers him is he's realizing that Selden's negotiating with the robot and not him, and that he, once again, isn't important. And that drives him crazy.
Yeah, because here he starts out as the Cleon who chose peace, and that was going to be his marker on history. And he's not able to keep that up. And how much of what Dr. Selden's doing there is intentional then? Because I did wonder when I'm watching the scene, like, why is he talking to Demerzel, and why is Demerzel so hard to read here? Do you think that that's a tactic on his part?
Well, yes. he gives Demerzel the Prime Radiant, which I think many people will find incredibly shocking.
I did.
And wonder why in the hell is he doing that? And that's a question that we're not going to answer. That will become a central question next season, is why in God's name did he give Demerzel the Radiant? And that's one that we will answer eventually.
Yeah.
But, I mean, as is the case with both Harry and Dr. Selden, there's often more going on than meets the eye. Mm-hmm. What is clear is that he seemed to have goaded Empire into a war, between what he did with Hober and the Spacers and what he did with Polly and Constant, and sort of, picking away at Dave's ego. He's clearly goading him into a war, although by the end of the episode, it seems like it's gone disastrously wrong.
Yeah, and it doesn't really warm you to Harry much while this is going on either. No. It really kind of reinforces that idea that he's cold and calculating and he doesn't care about people.
I've seen that reaction online, and I'm okay with that. that's going to plan.
Yeah. So because there's a lot of mystery there. We do get that brief exchange with him and Cermak outside of the vault.
Yeah, which is a lovely scene, and
that's in 208, I think, not this one, but
it's interesting though that you mentioned that, because Cermak comes across as sort of a ridiculous, outrageous character, but then is quite redeemed in that in that scene. And we did something similar with Lewis in season 1. And I like doing that with characters.
Yeah.
I like, because, how many times in your own life have you met someone that you didn't like and then eventually get to know them and you like them? And I think that's, it just, obviously sometimes it's the opposite, but people are complicated, and a lot of times they're fronting and they're hiding, how they really feel. And so I love that scene in 8 between Cermak and Selden. And I will say Selden is, even though a lot of people don't trust Selden or don't like Selden's motivations this season, which again, I'm okay with, he's quite gentle and understanding with Cermak in that moment.
Yeah.
And
I think that
and it's complex. People are, why is he doing that? Why is he being so benevolent there?
Yeah, it gives you a little bit of a counter argument whenever when you think about it through that. And I mean, there was real stakes there too. I mean, his daughter, brother Constant, is she gave at that point. It looks like she gave her life for this, for this cause, and yeah.
But then the other question, though, people are questioning Selden's motives or the fact that he seems to be a cold son of a bitch, and I think that, and all of that's true. But if you're setting out to save trillions of people,
yes,
you might have to break a few eggs. You might have to break a few planets. You might have to. The life of one person, even one planet, may not matter. And so the question is, the bigger the job, heavy is the head that hangs that wears the crown. The bigger the job, think about the kinds of choices that the president of the United States has to make. In some case, consigning, platoons of soldiers to the death, knowing they're going to die or whatnot. And then expand that, to 10,000 worlds and trillions of people. And it's really difficult. I'm not sure that someone attempting to do that could, I would argue that one would almost have to have a distance from the people that he was trying to save, or else you would get wrapped around the axle of trying to save all these individual people when you're trying to save all of humanity. Yeah,
and in your version of the story, that he did give his life for this. He brings that up here. He died for it. That, I guess he may have died. He would have died eventually, but it's not like he doesn't extend that to himself to a certain extent. He thought that would be the best move based on the situation, and he had Rach kill him. So
yeah. Well, the other thing that I'd have viewers think about is just because a character does something this season, particularly with characters like Harry and Dr. Selden, we play them, their cards close to their chests, and we're definitely in it for the long game, and some of what's going on may not be completely apparent this season. It will become more apparent next season.
Yeah. So as far as what we have, I mean, there's two other big things that we have to get into, I guess, before we wrap this one up. First of all, Demerzel leaves.
Yes.
I thought it was great how they played this, the two actors. You really get the sense that Brother Day feels her absence because she's always there when she stops in that hallway. I wasn't, there's a couple moments here where I wasn't sure, like when she's in the vault, like what she was thinking about. And here I wasn't sure if she just put the pieces together, when I was watching this for the first time, like something that Harry had said to her finally clicked, but I mean, she explains, I guess, what's going on there later. But yeah, I just thought that was really great. And the whole idea of, she can walk away from him. That didn't really seem, that was a surprise.
Yeah. And that there was, the question is what's more important than what's going on with Terminus and the Foundation right now. Mm-hmm. And obviously we're not going to tell the audience that yet, but it's a complete shock today in that moment. And what I love is after that scene, the doors open when Day enters the bridge of the Destiny, and they open it, and you see this sort of lost look on his face, like he just doesn't know what to do, and suddenly he just decides, I'm so angry, I'm so sickened by myself that I'm just going to destroy a bunch of planets and hope that makes me feel better.
And Hober called him yesterday right before.
Yeah. That was
such a good setup. But I mean, obviously the line she delivers to him there, you're a sperm led by its flailing flagellum, mistaking its random motion for complexity. It's
she just completely eviscerates and destroys them.
Yeah, that's precision there. You know, when she was threatening Sarah a few episodes back, she talked about the way that she can do her job, and she really does it here with Day in a way that was just a lot of fun to watch. Like you said, he doesn't know what to do with it, so he turns it into rage. Hober plays a little bit of a part in that. You know, I guess when I'm watching this for the first time, I'm expecting that something's going to happen where the planet doesn't get destroyed. I mean, I don't know how else to more elegantly put that. I didn't expect to see this happen at the end of this episode.
Well, the fun thing about, as we make the show, I'll show it to a select group of people, as we're editing and whatnot, who haven't, been involved in the making of the show, and to gauge their reaction. And to a person, people are just stunned at the end of this episode. They just like, how does the show even continue after this episode? And that's kind of what we want. And I don't want to reveal to your audience how we wrote our way out of that particular corner, but it would have felt appropriate to end the season on this episode, I think. It would have been a massive cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. But then there's one more episode, and I think that when I'm in the writer's room, I like to talk about, when we're kicking around ideas, what's something that we could do that would feel like it would completely break the show, would destroy the show. Mm-hmm. Well, if we just destroyed Terminus.
Yeah. It's kind of what it felt like.
We took it, yeah. And that was, everyone felt that would be the biggest thing we could possibly do, and that we couldn't possibly do it. And I said, well, that's what we're going to do. Now we just have to figure out what happens next. And that for me is exciting, when the audience just says, what the fuck? What just happened? Did all those characters die? Oh my God, what's going on? And certainly that was the case even within my own writer's room when I suggested it. I know I happen to have a solution potentially up my sleeve, but everyone was just aghast,
Yeah, because there were so many ways that it could undo itself. I mean, you have Glaywin on the planet. You have Bell, who obviously has a grudge against Empire, and obviously he could do that. You have She Bends Light right over there. Maybe she's going to do something. So whenever when you're watching those final moments, and Bell's his conversation there, I mean, the emotions are all the way up. You know what I mean? Like all of the setup you did with those characters is paying off. And I guess as a viewer, I put myself in that guy's position. Like, what would I do? And there's no good answer. He has no good choice.
No, I knew from the beginning of the construction of the TV version of Bell's character that he was going to push the button and destroy Terminus, that we wanted to put him in an impossible situation, that was the most grueling.
Yeah.
What wasn't immediate was that Glaywin was going to be on the planet when it happened. And I think we might have had the outline for the episode, and I said, but how can we make this even more excruciating? Let's put Glawen on the planet when he has to press the button. And then I think everyone in the audience thinks, well, he's not going to press the button. But then he does. And then they say in TV, no one's dead unless you see a body. But then we absolutely destroy the planet. So, I mean, that planet is destroyed.
It's cracked.
It's not coming back.
Yeah, it's cracked. There was a subtle thing of like where I can't even remember who's the one who says it, but the singularity will tear the planet apart, and you see that happen. Like, there's not really a question of like, oh, well, maybe some people, maybe there'll be some survivors.
Anyone left on that planet is dead.
Yeah,
they're dead
pretty clearly.
Yeah.
Like, the atmosphere is essentially gone, and
it's boiled away. Yeah,
it's a big burning ball of lava for the most part. And one of the, like, this look, you mentioned the look on Day's face when he walks in after Demerzel leaves, and then you see this look on his face here. This is, I mean,
it's orgasmic.
Yeah.
I mean, he's and horrific. Lee did a masterful job of Day this season, but he's a really venal, insecure, petty man this day.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously very dangerous because of that.
Yeah, it's like I said, the first time I watched it, I was just like, okay, that happened, and
Were you surprised?
And I had screeners, so I was like, I really just want to jump right into the next episode, but I have to actually sit and think about, like, what's going on here, because. Yeah, it's just a way to end it. And I'll just say, is there anything else you want to add to that?
I do think it's one of the best episodes that we've done so far out of the 20 episodes. It's hard for me to, pick and choose, but it's certainly in my top 4. I'm very excited to engage with the fans and have them debate about what has happened in this episode, because we tried really hard to make just a killer hour of television with this episode, and to make the kind of penultimate episode that I would like to see, as an audience member. And I feel like we've achieved that, and I hope the audience feels that, and I hope they're telling people it's an incredibly heartbreaking episode. I mean, I've watched it many times with people, and everyone's bawling by the end of that episode, particularly in the scene with Bell and Glawen, before he pushes the button.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with 100%. I think this, the characters, I think that these are sort of like, based on the way the show, we know we kind of only going to spend one season with a lot of these characters, and see, we've only known them for a little while, and really just feel invested in what's going on with them. Everything they're doing makes sense for what how you've introduced them to us. Nobody's like, just doing something because it needs to happen or something like that. Everything, I think, the emotion, it's earned, you know what I mean? It's not just like, oh, look at this crazy thing we're going to do. I'm there with the characters. I'm there with the story. And I was just like, holy hell. No more Terminus.
We tried to give all of the major characters a really satisfying arc that made sense for their characters, so that they felt very in character. And hopefully the audience feels that way. But yeah, I'm glad you feel that way, because I did feel like all the actions that the various characters took leading up to this I mean, to a certain extent, some of Demerzel's actions still need to be explained. Hopefully next episode, but I think what Day did at the end of this episode is a logical progression of what we've seen, what Bell did, what Glaywin did, and kind of on and on and on. And, that was something that we took a tremendous amount of care of.
All right. And, we're going to get together and we're going to talk about the finale also. So I think we're going to leave this one here. I just want to thank you again for being generous with your time and coming and talking to my viewers and me to talk about this show. And I'm looking forward to the finale. So we'll catch back up after that.
Me too. Thank you very much.